The laughter echoed sharper than the breaking glass. Clara stood frozen, her trembling hands clutching a jar of pickles and peanut butter, her latest craving. Ryan's smirk cut deeper than his words as their friends chuckled around the dinner table. Her cheeks burned, but she swallowed her tears, forcing a smile that cracked at the edges. He thought it was harmless teasing, but each joke chipped away at something sacred, the warmth between them. That night, as the laughter faded and silence filled the house, Clara whispered to her unborn child, "One day, you'll know what love sounds like." She didn't know those words would become a promise she'd keep alone. Could he ever crave again what he so easily mocked? Morning light filtered through the curtains, painting the walls with quiet melancholy. Ryan brewed coffee like nothing had happened. Clara moved wordlessly, her hands resting on her stomach, as if protecting something unseen. He cracked another joke about pregnancy moods, not noticing how her silence had become armor. She smiled faintly, but inside, she began building walls he wouldn't see until they towered between them. At the maternity clinic, Clara sat in stillness as the doctor spoke gently about prenatal care. Ryan scrolled through his phone, distracted. Each heartbeat on the monitor was a whisper of love, but his eyes never lifted. She realized then she was already learning to be strong alone. That night, Clara journaled quietly by the window. Each word was a seed of hope buried in sorrow. The rain outside masked her tears. She wrote to her unborn child about dreams, about kindness, about laughter that doesn't hurt. Ryan watched her sleeping, unaware that distance was already forming. Her calm breathing, her quiet strength, it unnerved him. He didn't understand that her silence wasn't surrender. It was goodbye in slow motion. Days turned into quiet patterns. The laughter that once filled their kitchen was replaced by the rhythmic hum of the refrigerator and Clara's soft humming to her unborn child. Ryan came home later each evening, the glow of his phone brighter than her eyes. She no longer asked him to join her for dinner. He no longer asked how she was feeling. Their love had become a habit of coexistence. Two people sharing a roof but not a heartbeat. Yet inside her, life grew stubbornly. Beating, breathing, becoming everything she wished he still was. Clara began to write letters she never sent. Each one started with "Dear Ryan," and ended with something she wished he'd said first. In those letters, she forgave him 1,000 times, only to feel the ache of forgiving alone. She placed them inside her baby journal, not to be read, but to remember who she was before silence became her language. At breakfast, she offered him pancakes shaped like hearts. He laughed, called them childish. She smiled, but her eyes no longer pleaded for warmth. The syrup pooled between them, glistening like the sweetness they'd lost. He didn't notice that she stopped eating after that day. Her cravings weren't for food anymore. They were for kindness. That night, rain returned. Clara stood by the window again, watching the world shimmer under streetlight reflections. Ryan's voice drifted faintly from the living room, talking, laughing into his phone. Not with her. She placed her hand on her belly, whispering softly, "We'll find joy again, even if it's just us." The reflection in the glass looked stronger than the woman inside. Clara dreamed of the day she'd finally hold her baby. In her dreams, Ryan was there, smiling, present, whole. But in the waking world, his chair at the table remained empty. Love, she realized, doesn't always vanish with a fight. Sometimes it slips away quietly, unnoticed, until all that's left are the echoes of laughter and the whisper of what might have been. The air was thick with music and chatter, but Clara felt every note scrape against her heart. Ryan had insisted she come. "You need to get out," he said. But the laughter around her only reminded her how trapped she was. When someone joked about her strange cravings, Ryan joined in with a smirk that once would have made her laugh too. This time, she just stared at him, her silence louder than the music. The room tilted, not from dizziness but from realization. She wasn't angry anymore, just empty. Somewhere between the clinking glasses and his careless words, she understood. Love can die without noise, but disrespect buries it for good. When the laughter turned toward her again, another joke about pregnancy hormones, Clara stood up. Her chair scraped the floor, cutting through the noise. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She simply looked at Ryan, eyes steady, voice soft. "You're supposed to protect me from the world," she said, "not join it in laughing at me." The table fell silent. His smirk faltered for the first time. For a second, he almost looked like the man she once loved. But the moment passed. She picked up her purse and walked out, leaving his unfinished laughter behind. Outside, the cold bit at her skin, but it was the silence that burned deeper. Clara walked without destination, her breath clouding the night air. Behind her, Ryan didn't follow. Inside, the lights were still warm, the laughter resuming as if nothing had happened. She stopped under a street lamp, placing her hand on her belly. "You deserve peace," she whispered. For the first time, the world felt both terrifying and free. Back home, the silence grew heavier. Ryan returned late, the smell of wine clinging to his shirt. He found the living room lights dimmed, her journal gone from the nightstand. For the first time, he noticed the emptiness, not just of the room, but of his life. He called her name, but only the echo answered. In that hollow sound, he heard every ignored word, every joke that landed like a blade. The craving for her laughter hit him then, but it was far too late. He found her note on the kitchen counter the next morning, just a single line in her careful handwriting. "When respect returns, maybe love will too." There was no anger, no plea, no signature. Only truth. Ryan stood still, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence she'd left behind. The peanut butter jar sat on the counter, beside an open pack of pickles. The sight of it twisted something deep inside him. He laughed once, hollowly, and then, for the first time, he cried. 3 months passed. The house had become a museum of echoes. Her laughter, her footsteps, her voice calling his name in memory alone. Ryan moved through it like a ghost, touching the furniture she once arranged, the curtains she had chosen, the kitchen she had made warm. He thought the silence would punish him. Instead, it taught him what peace had sounded like when she was still there. Every small sound, the creak of the floor, the drip of the faucet, mocked him with the rhythm of a love he had crushed without realizing. He hadn't heard from her since that night, but every sunrise he hoped for the impossible. The sound of her key in the door. He tried to fill the silence with work, with noise, with anything that wasn't memory. But every coffee cup reminded him of her morning rituals. Every store aisle echoed with her laughter. One evening he walked by the cafe they used to visit, the one with the corner table and the cinnamon scent she loved. He stopped outside, unable to go in. Through the glass he saw strangers laughing, the kind of laughter that used to belong to him. He realized he wasn't afraid of being alone. He was afraid of being forgotten. One Saturday morning, as the world moved on without him, he wandered into the park. He sat by the lake where they once talked about baby names and future plans. Now, the water mirrored only his reflection, older, empty. A child's laughter echoed across the field, piercing something tender within him. For a brief second, he let himself imagine Clara there, smiling, holding their daughter, the sunlight touching her hair. The image felt so real that he almost spoke aloud. Then, the sound faded, and the world was silent again. Weeks later, while stopping at a grocery store, he saw her, Clara, her hair shorter now, her presence calmer, stronger. She was holding a baby, wrapped in a pale blanket. She didn't see him at first, and for a moment he just watched, the way she smiled softly down at the child, her peace unbroken. Then she looked up. Their eyes met across the aisle between baby food and coffee jars. There were no words, only time standing still. In her gaze, he saw everything he had mocked, everything he had lost, and everything he would never get back. He didn't approach her. He couldn't. She smiled once, soft, polite, final, and walked away. He stood there, surrounded by the quiet hum of the store, watching as the woman he once mocked now carried everything he had dreamed of. For the first time, Ryan understood that love, once broken, doesn't vanish. It just finds a new home, somewhere safer. And as her figure disappeared through the automatic doors, he whispered a silent prayer for her happiness. It was the only gift left to give. That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, the grocery store replayed. The sight of her calm smile, the soft rhythm of the baby's breathing against her chest. His guilt had become something physical, a weight that sat in his chest and refused to lift. He wandered through the house, touching her old things. The tea mug she loved, the scarf she left behind, the baby book she had started. Each object was a ghost, whispering, "You didn't listen." For the first time, he understood that cruelty isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the silence after laughter dies. He drove to the park the next morning, the same place where they once planned to name their baby. He sat on the bench, watching mothers push strollers and fathers chasing toddlers. Every smile around him was a mirror, reflecting what he'd thrown away. He pulled from his pocket the ultrasound photo he had found weeks earlier. The tiny shape inside the image used to feel like a burden. Now, it was the only piece of beauty he still believed in. "I would have loved you," he whispered, "if I had known how." That afternoon, he visited the cafe where they had shared their first date. The waitress recognized him, smiled kindly, and placed a cup of cappuccino on his table. "The usual," she said softly. But the seat across from him remained painfully empty. He stirred the cup slowly, watching the foam swirl into fading patterns, remembering her laughter echoing through that same space. The realization cut deep. Love isn't about grand gestures. It's about moments you fail to see until they're gone. As dusk settled, Ryan stood by the nursery door. He hadn't opened it since the day she left. The pastel walls, the untouched crib, the stuffed bear she'd bought, all waited in silence. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, and let the quiet break him. He whispered her name and then their daughter's, words he had never spoken out loud. The emptiness didn't answer, but for the first time, he didn't run from it. He let it hurt. Because healing, he realized, starts where pride ends. That night, Ryan stood on the porch, staring at the stars. The house behind him was still, the world outside gently breathing. He thought about Clara's calm smile, the baby's eyes he would never see up close, and the way life keeps moving even when you wish it would pause. He didn't know if she'd ever forgive him. Maybe she shouldn't. But as he whispered their names into the night, a strange peace settled in his chest, not from forgetting, but from finally remembering what love should have been. The next morning, Ryan woke with a decision heavy on his chest. He couldn't keep living in memories. He needed to see her, to say what he should have said before everything fell apart. He rehearsed the words as he drove through streets they once walked together, his hands trembling on the wheel. The closer he got to her new address, the more his heartbeat drowned out the world around him. He didn't want her back out of guilt. He wanted her to know he finally understood. That understanding came too late, but he needed her to hear it once, from the man he should have been. He stood outside her apartment door, clutching the small box. Inside, the first ultrasound photo, the ring she'd left behind, and a handwritten apology. When she opened the door, time hesitated. Clara looked different, lighter somehow, as if she had rebuilt herself from the ashes he left behind. She didn't flinch, didn't turn away. Her calm gaze met his with quiet curiosity, not anger. "Ryan," she said softly, like his name no longer hurt to speak. And for the first time, he didn't speak to win her back. He spoke to set her free. He told her everything. How he laughed to hide his fear. How he ignored her because he couldn't face his own shame. how he finally learned that love isn't measured by strength, but by gentleness. Clara listened quietly, her eyes soft but unreadable. She didn't interrupt, didn't argue. When he finished, there was only silence. Then, she said, "I forgave you a long time ago." Her words didn't carry warmth or cold. They carried truth. Forgiveness wasn't an invitation to return. It was a release. He smiled through the ache. Her forgiveness didn't heal him. It humbled him. He reached out gently, brushing Mila's tiny hand with his finger. The baby stirred but didn't cry. "She looks like you," he whispered. Clara nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "She has your eyes," she replied. For a moment, it was almost peaceful. The three of them in the same room, hearts still bound by something deeper than love. Memory. Then Ryan stood, knowing peace sometimes means walking away. Before leaving, Ryan turned back once more. "Thank you," he said quietly. Not for forgiveness, but for showing him what love truly meant. Clara nodded, holding Mila closer. "Take care of yourself," she replied, her voice steady but kind. Outside, the sky had cleared. As Ryan walked toward his car, the world seemed brighter, yet emptier. He realized that redemption doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it's learning to live with the echo of what could have been, and being grateful it once existed at all. Weeks passed, but her words lingered. "I forgave you a long time ago." Forgiveness had sounded like closure. But to Ryan, it felt like a mirror reflecting who he used to be. He tried to eat again, to sleep again, to move on. But everything reminded him of her, especially the cravings he once mocked. Late at night, he'd find himself reaching for peanut butter and pickles, not out of hunger, but longing. Every bite tasted of memory, of laughter he didn't deserve. It wasn't the food he craved. It was the warmth of a love he could never taste again. He began visiting the park again, sitting on the same bench, watching parents laugh with their children. It was strange how peaceful it felt now. He didn't look for Clara anymore. He just sat there, quietly grateful that somewhere in that same town, his daughter was growing up loved and safe. The ache remained, but it softened. He had once mocked the cravings of pregnancy. Now he understood they were never about food. They were signs of life, of care, of hope. Things he once took for granted, now sacred in his absence. Sometimes he dreamt of her. In those dreams, she wasn't sad anymore. She was laughing, holding Mila, surrounded by warmth. And he was there too, but only as a quiet observer, standing in the background, watching the life he once could have had. He never tried to reach her in those dreams. He simply watched and smiled because in her joy, he finally found his redemption. When he woke, he no longer cried. He'd just whisper, "Thank you," to the empty air, as if she could somehow still hear him. One afternoon, Ryan wrote a final letter. Not to ask for forgiveness or pity, but to leave something behind that might matter one day. He wrote about laughter, about mistakes, about how love should always be kind. He signed it, "For Mila, from the man who learned too late." Then he placed the letter in a small wooden box, the same one he once gave Clara, and buried it under the oak tree at the park. He didn't cry this time. Some goodbyes deserve silence. That night, the sky was clear, an endless stretch of quiet stars. Ryan sat by the window, a small jar of peanut butter beside him, watching the world move without him. He smiled, faintly. For the first time in a long while, it didn't hurt. He understood now that Clara's cravings weren't for food. They were for connection, for understanding, for love. The same cravings he now carried every day, only his would never be satisfied, because the feast of love he once mocked had already been served, and he had walked away hungry.